Hello, children. So, today your topic is psychological models. It is in continuation to the factors underlying the abnormal behavior. So, we've already done the biological models and now moving on to the psychological models. So, children, in case of psychological models, there are, a couple of factors, you know, which actually include like maternal deprivation, which actually means when you're separated from your mother or there's lack of warmth, lack of stimulation during your early years. There's a faulty parent child relationship. Maybe there could be rejection or there could be overprotection, over permissiveness, faulty discipline, maladaptive family structures. Like at times the family could be slightly disturbed, a certain inadequacies could be there, and some other kind of stress. you know so when we talk about the psychodynamic model, children, it actually believes that the behavior, whether the behavior is normal or whether it is abnormal, it all comes down to the psychological forces which are governing it. you know and these psychological forces, they are within the person, of which she is not consciously aware. So these internal forces, they are very very dynamic. They interact with each other, and then that's how our behavior is getting shaped, our thoughts are getting shaped, our emotions are getting shaped. And if ever we see abnormal symptoms, they are resulting because of the conflicts between these forces. So, this model, the psychodynamic model, was first actually initiated, or rather formulated by Freud. And we know that he talked about the three very important forces that shape the personality, and that's id, ego, and we have the superego. So, whenever there are mental conflicts, they can actually be generally traced to early childhood or infancy. So that is what actually makes the behavior quite abnormal, or the symptoms, they start manifesting because of that, those mental conflicts. Then the other model is the behavioral model. you know and according to this model, the normal and the abnormal behaviors are learned. you know and they are basically a result of the maladaptive ways of behaving. So of course we are picking up certain behaviors. There could be many sources of learning these behaviors, but particularly the learning can take place by classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and it can also take place because of social learning, where you are learning by actually looking at people, or rather by imitating others' behavior. Then, children, if you see the cognitive behavior, you know, it is basically talking about the cognitive problems. All the abnormal functioning is, the root cause lies in the cognitive problems. People can start holding assumptions, and certain attitudes about themselves that could be very inaccurate. Perceptions, these attitudes, these assumptions, they could be very inaccurate, they could be very illogical, and they can continue to think in illogical ways, and they can also make overgeneralizations. you know and that's how they start drawing negative conclusions, on the basis of just one insignificant event. So basically it all comes down to your cognitive problems, your cognition, the way you think, the way you are trying to know the world. It is all with your thought process. And the humanistic existential model, children, it is focusing on the broader aspects of human existence. So humanists, they actually have this belief that human beings, they are all born with a natural tendency. We all have that potential already within us. We all have that natural tendency already within us to be cooperative, to be constructive, to be friendly. And we all have the drive to self actualize this potential in us, you know, towards the entire goodness and full growth. We all have that in us, children. And the existentials, they actually believe that right from birth, we do have that freedom, where we can really give a meaning to our lives, or we can run away from the responsibilities. Either we can fulfill it, or we might not, you know. So the ones who do not take up this responsibility, you know, they are the ones who are basically living very empty and authentic and a very, very dysfunctional life, you know. So then we move on to the next one, which is talking about the socio-cultural model. And you can see some of the keywords here, the key highlights: cultural expectations, stigma and prejudice, homelessness, abuse, you know. So, of course, abnormal behavior as per this model, children, is, it's all in context to the social and cultural forces, and how the social and cultural forces are influencing an individual. And the behavior is actually getting shaped by societal forces like family structure, communication, social networks, societal conditions, societal labels, and the roles, you know. So it's been found, children, that there are certain family systems which are actually the cause of abnormal functioning in individual members. So, some family structures, you would see, the members, they are quite, or I would say, over involved in each other's activities, their thoughts, their feelings. There's so much interference in certain families. Children in such families, they cannot become independent, how much ever they try, you know. And so, studies have also shown that people who are very isolated, who lack that kind of social support, and they are not having those interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal relationships are not strong and very fulfilling. So, they are the ones who can easily get depressed. They are the ones who can be in depression for probably the longest time, you know, and they don't really have good friendships. And the socio-cultural theorists, they also believe that abnormal functioning is somewhere getting influenced by the societal labels, the roles that have been assigned to these troubled people. And when these people, they break the norms, they are called mentally ill, deviant. Such labels, when used, they tend to stick so that the person may be viewed as crazy and can be encouraged to act sick, you know. So the person gradually learns to accept and play the sick role and functions and begins to function in a very disturbed manner. So the society, the culture together are playing a major role in case of socio-cultural model. And so it's very important how you're trying to give the right kind of upbringing to the child. What's the family structure? How supportive is the society? How supportive are the family members, the friends around, you know? Then we have the diathesis stress model, children. And there are the three conditions which you can see, they have been given on the slide as well: presence of some biological aberration, vulnerability, vulnerability, presence of pathogenic stressors. So this model, children, if you see, it actually means that psychological disorders, they develop when a diathesis is set off by a stressful situation. Now, what is a diathesis? A diathesis is a predisposition to the disorder. It's a biological prediction, you can say, to the disorder. There is a possibility, there is a likability that the disorder may take place. It may get induced or may get triggered, you know. So there is a biological prediction, a predisposition. So it has three components. The first is there is already a presence of a biological aberration. So which means that there is a possibility of inheritance, that it has been inherited, to the individual from anyone in the family. You know. Second is that there is a vulnerability to develop a psychological disorder. So the person is quite vulnerable. Which means the person is at risk. Or there is probably a predisposition. There is a kind of a risky prediction, you can say. Predisposition means there's a proneness, a proneness is there to risk, you know so proneness would be a better word. So there's this more of a proneness, to actually develop the disorder. So the person is prone. If you see in the second prediction, vulnerability means he's quite prone to it. And biological predisposition would also mean a proneness, something that you probably feel that can actually happen anytime soon. And the third is the presence of the pathogenic stressors, which means the factors or any stressors which can lead to psychopathology. You know, so a person who's at risk, children, they are actually exposed to these kind of stressors, and their predisposition may actually evolve into a disorder. So there is a time when they're prone, but this proneness can lead to a disorder actually getting developed, getting evolved, you know. And they can be disorders like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, because we've studied before also that how, they can be inherited. How a person can be vulnerable means can be prone to it. How a person can probably become even more prone because of certain pathogenic stressors around. So this was all about the factors that underlying the psychological disorders. So thank you so much, children.